I want to welcome everybody back to our next episode of Between the Mics with Chris and Alicia. And we have a special guest today, which I am super excited about. A lot of the things that she does, I have a ton of questions for, so I'm going to be literally just kind of going after you with them. But our guest today is Sarah Vasquez. She is the owner of the Ad Alchemist. And Sarah, why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about what you do? I'm really going to kind of go into a little bit more in regards to, let's actually
I know you have a ton of
I
questions,
have a
so
ton of questions. I know. You know
okay.
what? Let's just start easy. Sarah, why don't you introduce
Okay.
yourself?
Hi, I'm Sarah Garrett Vasquez, the Ad Alchemist. And what I do is basically make sure that your brand strategy, your communication, your messaging is aligned with your audience. If your campaigns aren't hitting, we figure out why and we go from there. And what I do is hard for me to describe because it's something that I feel like has not really been focused on yet. So I have come from a background of agency, in-house, freelance. Like I've done all those things over my career, and I've seen some overarching bottlenecks and some frustrations, from all the sides of it. And with my neurodivergent brain and the way that it works, I tend to think in frameworks. And coming from a creative background, this is a unique combination. And so that means that when you're juggling multiple agencies or multiple internal teams, a lot of times your messaging can get fragmented. Your product team might be saying something different than your demand gen team, and your marketing and brand team has to figure out how to make it all work, right? So I'm the person that looks at that and comes at it from like an executive level strategy, kind of look like a fractional CMO, but very specifically towards getting your brand in alignment with your audience. And what I do differently is to bring in this proprietary framework that I use called the cognitive resonance framework, which focuses on making sure that your messaging is going to actually resonate with your audience. They're going to have it stick in their head and keep thinking about that brand touch point, that thing that you said. And this is based off of truly knowing the audience and using ethical AI and applied persuasion science, cognitive science to blend that with the audience psychology to make sure that it's really working. And with the addition of AI, it's allowing us to do things like create GPT models that allow you to emulate your audience before you're even running a campaign. So you can kind of run the messaging by them, see how they might respond, kind of chat with your customer personas,
Yeah.
so to speak. And I call them dynamic customer personas because it rolls with your brand.
That's
Absolutely.
fantastic. I want
Sorry,
to
that was a lot.
No, 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 no,
No,
no.
it's great.
That was great. So, interesting enough, the ethical AI is something that we heard from someone else as well on the podcast. So I would love to like dig into what is ethical AI. Yeah, there's my question. What is ethical AI? How do you use it? What is it?
So I will talk about it from kind of my perspective, specifically within marketing, as to what that means. Because a lot of times when you hear the term ethical AI or ethical tech, that is more on the dev side, more on the programming side, which is not me. And that typically speaks to things like data privacy and disclosure, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And that's not indifferent to how I look at it, but my whole reason for getting into marketing from being a commercial photographer was because I had this existential crisis of I'm working on fashion campaigns that are actively contributing to like my own trauma from this industry. And, that was many, many years ago, but it started this, my personal why, right,
Yeah.
is essentially to protect the audience from any accidental damage we might do as marketers. We and communicators, we know to leverage things like fears and insecurities, and it's okay to do that as long as you're doing it from a place of genuinely trying to bring value to the person you're talking to, whether you're trying to sell a product or change somebody's mind about a PSA ad. There are ethical ways to do that, and to me, that means that the democratization of AI brings a lot of things like communication models and advanced persuasion science, right, to the average person. And that's cool. But when you're somebody that actually works in that field, you are also exposed to a lot of ethics training and working through ethical dilemmas and things like that to make sure you really understand this is the impact that this could have on an audience. When there are ways to force somebody's brain down a certain path they can't turn away from. And if you're going to do that, you better make sure you're doing it right. So I use AI to kind of keep that reined in. Use my work, my past work to train it on my processes, how I do things. So it's ethically trained, right? I'm not necessarily pulling from other people's work. I'm pulling from my own work. I'm training it on my own voice, or the brand's voice, the brand's guidelines, and using public data to, that's where I would say we do scrape the internet, right? Like public data about people, but that's going to be things like what's already on social media, what's publicly out there. I'm not, unless specifically requested by the client to look at some predictive analytics, not typically using internal customer data to train these models.
Okay, so that kind of leads me to my next question, because I think AI is really, it's just starting out, right? And people are just learning how to use it correctly. So you mentioned training the AI to represent you. How do you go about doing that?
Well, right now I primarily am using a GPT model that I'm configuring. And so this has been a long process, so it's not something you can do just overnight, but it started for me several years ago where, again, I mentioned I'm neurodivergent, a blend of autism and ADHD. So that means my brain is kind of constantly fighting with each other, or with itself, with each other. Feels like that sometimes, meaning I need structure and I need to feel like I've got every last detail that I understand, but I also can't hold it all in my head, and that causes a lot of internal conflict.
Yeah.
So all of this started with me just trying to document this so that I would not lose anything, not let anything fall through the cracks. And a lot of times the ADHD side of my brain will get this aha moment, and I'll go into this deep hyper focus where I'm working on something for hours, just perfecting it. And then I want to document that process. So that's where I started using AI to basically help me document my processes. And then once I started doing that and I had this like whole personal SOP library built, I started the GPTs based off of that, past strategies and the reports, and kind of retroizing that to see, what are these things that I'm doing? Like, I know what I do works. Why does it work? How can I replicate that, and how can I turn that into something that I can then teach this GPT to do to speed up the process for me so I can serve my clients better?
That's great. I actually created several different GPT-like modes for my personal, Elise as a brand, and then each of our client brands, so that I trained it to like think the way that that persona thinks, talk the way that the brand talks, and then anytime I have a project, I go into that specific persona in order to flush it out. But I have found that to be a game changer of just like
Absolutely.
customizing what you need to do. So
Yeah, well, it almost gives you that insight of what
And
the actual buyer is looking for,
Right.
So it's kind of taking all that information. Like, all right,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. For anybody that's getting started with AI, a lot of people don't realize that you can go in and customize ChatGPT on how you want it to respond to you and what you want it to remember about you. So you can go in just at the overall level, not even training different models, but you're just overall OpenAI account, and you can tell it, I am a brand strategist, or I am this, I am that, these are the things I personally struggle with. This is how I want you to help me. My model knows that executive dysfunction is a major pain point for me, and that I will refine into oblivion if given the options. So I have it trained, directed to kind of keep me reined in so that I don't deliver 75-page decks.
That's fantastic. So interesting enough, and I'm not sure, Sarah, if you know this, but Chris and I are brother and sister. And so I had gone over to our parents' house, and my dad is responsible for taking notes at a meeting just one of his organization meetings, whatever. And he spends 3 hours transcribing his notes on his laptop and
Oh
then
my
putting
gosh.
them into, I know, right? Putting them into a document
There are
that
rules for that, Dad.
I was watching him and I was like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I take the notes and then I organize them and put them into the meeting minutes and then I distribute them to the team. And I was like, I'm going to blow your mind in a second. I go, this is what we're going to do. You're going to give your chat a personality that's an executive meeting minute taker. And they're going to take all of your chicken scratch and they are going to turn it into the best meeting notes ever. So this morning he said, you cut 3 hours of our time and that takes him now 25 minutes to do meeting notes.
And the funniest part about that
Amazing.
is my father,
Amazing.
before he retired, was the CIO.
Yeah.
So you would think that
But that wasn't like
it wasn't even
there.
a thing back then. No, I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. But just it's
Yeah.
funny to
Yeah.
kind of blow your parents' mind with something that's completely new, where
Yeah.
you would think he would be right on top of that. But
I know. So funny.
crazy.
What's crazy is that I think that's actually very much the trend, though. I mean, that's seeing with executive leadership is that they want to implement AI,
Yeah.
but it's just like hard for them to wrap their brain around, really know where to start or what to do. They've got the more junior members that are more comfortable with AI and maybe have some more experience with it, but don't have the executive knowledge and experience that
Yeah.
you need to have to be able to implement this. And again, that's where people like me come in to be like, okay, hey, this is how we can use AI to support your team, what you're already doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I have for y'all actually. So there's obviously the argument of professional creatives, right, about how AI is making them very nervous, and especially with generative. And we've got a lot of copywriters and a lot of beginners that are nervous about this sort of stuff. Creatives working with this or implementing AI in work right now.
Oh, sorry, you cut out there. Can you say that last sentence?
Oh no.
No.
Oh yeah, I was just saying, how do you see?
How do we see the creatives in the content space?
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah. How are you seeing them do right now?
Yeah, interesting enough, we just were working on a project, and I think that for us, when we get content back from a writer, and then we can take that and then utilize the chat prompts or the chat, modes that we have for that specific persona and run it through and say, okay, make sure that this content addresses the pain points, the differentiator of the brand, and how that buyer persona needs to digest information. And then it could output that content to speak directly to them. It levels up everything that we're doing. So I'm not relying on chat from the ground floor to create a website copy or a whole blog. Just like you had said, you spent a very long time training your chat.
Mm-hmm.
We have spent a really long time training our chat modes for specific clients so that I know that this one paragraph is going to be totally leveled up when I input the right prompt and the right, persona into it. And then I can go through and kind of add in any customization. But for us, it gives a level playing field. Like the majority of people are using AI to create content. The search engines now are pulling, like you don't even need to go into a website anymore. It's pulling the summary right there on Google. So any opportunity that we're able to kind of just have another gateway to double check and enhance what we're doing is kind of.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it even takes it a step further. I mean, I grew up in the Google phase, right? So anytime you needed anything, you Googled it. And I'll just kind of give an example.
Yeah.
The other day, I had an issue with my hot water heater and it was leaking from the pressure valve. And I basically Googled it, what could it be? And then I also put it into ChatGPT. ChatGPT gave me a whole list of things and it said, hey, if you give me a picture of it, I could better diagnose it. And I was like, okay. So I literally took a picture, and when I took a picture, I did close, and it said, that's not your pressure valve, that's this valve. So I kind of backed up and said, no, this is where it's leaking from. And it corrected itself and said, you are correct. That is the pressure valve. Here's all the list of things. And right down it goes. And I literally was working through it. And I was like, man, like at some point in time, I don't think it'll ever replace, a plumber or an electrician or anything like that, but it could at least help you get through those small problems that if you're just a little bit technical, the homeowner can do. So I think it's very interesting to kind of see just the different areas that it can help you in, whether it be personal.
The
It
modern
be,
day Ask Jeeves.
yeah, yeah. I was completely blown
Absolutely.
away.
I mean, my kids make fun of me because I use ChatGPT for everything, exactly like you said. I mean, literally everything,
Hmm.
because it's faster than Google, and usually it's just as accurate, if not more so.
Mhm.
Um, but I think of it kind of like the step up from I just watched a YouTube tutorial, right? Like it's a
Yes.
step up
Yes.
from that, which is super helpful. The creative stuff, though, I'm using it in a similar way, obviously. One thing that I've found, when you build in like a creative director's assistant to your AI tools, it cuts down on the back and forth on brand approval, and kind of shortens that timeline and approval chain when you know that your client or point of contact or whoever is the stakeholder here, is able to trust that this model has the brand guidelines, is
Mhm.
keeping everybody on point, and it's at that point allowing the creatives to do what they do and think about their ideas, kind of brain dump it in there, and then get it organized so that they can speed up to execution, or know, hey, actually that doesn't work, but if you flip it this way and kind of, then it would fit for this persona over here.
Yeah, for sure. I think too, like as a creative, especially storyboarding, I have ideas in my head. And in order to like pitch that, like Mad Men pitch it to a client, it has to be much clearer than what's in my head. So I may drop a ton of ideas into chat and then say, organize this in a way that could be presented to a client pitch. And it does it. It's not telling me the idea. I gave it the idea. It's just helping me to organize it. But I want to
Right.
touch on one thing that you had. About when companies feel like they've tried everything and they're stuck. And I hear this so often when we'll be meeting with a prospect and I'll look at their marketing and be like, your website is awesome, your social is like killing it, like what do you need? Like it seems like you have everything figured out. What do you need? And they respond back and say, we're doing so much, but we're not even growing. Like it's all smoke and mirrors. So I want to hit on that part that you speak to.
Yeah. Um, so most of the brands that come to me feel like they've done everything right, like you're talking about, right? Like they've hired the agencies, they've followed the best practices, launched the campaigns, but deep down, something is not clicking and they can't quite put their finger on it, but they know it's there. They just can't quite name it. You're nodding your head. So you're like, yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I
I know
get
what you're
it.
talking about.
Yep.
So, you know, what I often uncover is that it's probably not a tactics problem, it's a misalignment problem. That means you don't need to fire your media buyer. You don't need a new creative agency. What the brand is saying is one thing, and the audience is hearing something else. And the internal teams are in the middle trying to be like, okay, how do we make this work?
Yeah.
So what I find is it's usually a disconnect in the funnel, wasted spend, a lot of finger pointing, and I help brands realign at the source. So what I talked about before, like fragmented messaging, your demand gen team might be saying one thing, your sales team is saying another thing, product is like, these are the very specific things that we need to highlight. Everybody has a different idea of what goes into this, and there are just simply too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So depending on what you're doing, that's what you're going to be focused on. And when everybody is siloed out in these different focal points, it just kind of becomes fragmented. So that's where I come in to rein it all in, make it make sense, and truly be the bridge between the customer, audience, and the brand. Because, like, again, the brand thinks the audience wants to hear something. The audience actually thinks they want to hear something else. And there is a Venn diagram of like this one little space in the middle of what actually they need to hear. And that's the space I live in. And that's where it ties into this cognitive resonance framework that I've built and how that 4-step framework tends to realign and keep everything kind of going, building toolkits and frameworks that keep the marketing and content engine running.
I love the Venn diagram part.
Mm.
That's an awesome way of thinking about it. I talk to brands all the time, and sometimes they're talking up here on like a technical level, but their customers are just not, they don't have that knowledge, nor do they need it. That's why they have the software that this company is selling. So they don't need to know the whole back end, and kind of where is that sweet spot of giving them, of being the solution that they need, making them the hero in that.
100%.
Yeah.
And when we think about the customer journey and a sales funnel, right? Like we tend to think of it in a very specific linear format, but the reality is that persuasion is not linear. We know this about touch points, right? You could have a bazillion different touch points before somebody actually buys or converts to what you're doing. So it's not linear. And when you try and treat it that way, which a lot of times ends up just happening inherently when you put in automations and retargeting and all that sort of stuff, it can actually have the opposite effect of turning your customer off to your brand because you're not meeting them at the right place at the right time with what they need to hear in that moment. It's not that they're not wanting to hear from your brand. You're just serving them the wrong message in the wrong way.
At the wrong time.
At the wrong time. Exactly. At the wrong time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's funny. You're saying so much stuff, and I'm just kind of processing it. Like I feel like I'm sitting there quietly, but
Get
it's
your
like
notebook out.
I know it's really interesting. See, I'm a lot like you.
I think you're recording this.
Yeah, honestly, and that's kind of one of the biggest things. And we kind of mentioned chat before in regards to being able to kind of keep track of things. I'm like you in the sense of like I have so much going on in my mind that if I don't write it down or if I don't type it down quick enough, I lose it. Right. So I apologize. I'm sitting here quietly, but just what you're saying is very interesting. So I'm like, all right, cool.
Right.
Like,
I know you had so many questions.
I'm glad it's
did.
interesting.
I did. I said to Alicia, I'm going to riddle her with questions. And as we're sitting here, I'm like, oh, okay, that's
Okay,
interesting.
we'll hit you with one. What were your questions?
What do you got?
So, one of the things that we were touching on, which Alicia just kind of spoke about, was, recognizing that you have everything in place, you're doing everything right, but you're not getting the results, right? If I was an owner of a company and I'm trying to figure out whether or not we are doing things right or not, where would you tell them to start looking first?
Like identifying
like where the issue is.
Right,
Like, is it alignment?
Is it sales? Is it marketing?
Sales? Yeah.
Is it messaging? Yeah.
If somebody's coming to me for like a diagnostic like that, the first thing I want to do is look at all of their brand documents. I'm going to first go to their website, do essentially a audit of their digital footprint, because I'm going to look at it first from what is the customer seeing. And I put myself in the customer's point of view, pretending I know nothing about this product. A lot of times I don't. Somebody comes to me, I'm like, okay, before you tell me anything, as soon as I get that initial inquiry, I'm looking at everything, their social media presence, any residual ads or anything like that you can find on like the Facebook ad marketplace type stuff, looking at their website, any blog content, if they've been featured in the media, what are people saying about them? Because I want to know if I'm looking for your product or you're trying to target me, like how's that going to hit? Right. And then from there, I want to see their brand documents. Sometimes the brand documents don't exist. And when that is the case, that's where we start, because how can you have structure if you don't have a place to point all of your people touching the brand back to?
Can you touch
usually
on that,
Wait,
can you
go ahead?
touch on that for our listeners who don't know what brand documents are? Now, I do, because I live in this space. So when somebody doesn't have a brand document, it's like, because it makes my life really, really hard. So can you touch on what does a company have to have for brand documents?
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about like smaller to medium-sized businesses that are not like in the higher corporate or enterprise type space, because that's going to be usually pretty standard there. Side note, even when it's standard, they're not always up to what I consider to be par. So
that's a whole other podcast.
Usually, Usually when people think branding, they think logo, they think colors, they think the visual part, the fun part, right? But branding goes so much deeper than that. It is your message. It is your differentiators. It is what actually makes you valuable, why somebody should buy from you besides just, this is our product, this is what our product does, which is also another part of it, right? If it's a service-oriented business, same kind of concept. So those would kind of go into what I call brand guidelines, along with, this is what our brand sounds like. This is the tone of voice we use. This is the kind of language that we do and don't use. This is where we use certain fonts, where we don't use certain fonts. What else? Personas, who you're talking to, and how many of those. Sometimes people have just 1 to 3, but I really recommend having as many personas as you need to understand the number of audience segments you have. If you have niche audience segments, you should still have personas on those, even if they are tertiary. You hardly touch them. You still need to have that so that this is who we're talking to. Am I missing anything? Help me out here.
No.
I think that's incredibly important, the
Yeah.
point that you brought up in regards to buyer personas, right? Because we do see clients every once in a while that only have 1, 2, 3 of them. And when you really start listening to their story and who they're trying to sell to, like, there's tons of them,
multiple layers within that, right?
You
like
got it.
Somebody could be the developer for a property. Somebody could be the resident in a property, or
Yeah, and even if it's the person that you're not directly selling to, a lot of times those other individuals, if you talk to them, are going to put you in contact with the person that is actually the buyer, right? So if you
that is so true.
yeah, if you create that demand from that individual, which a lot of times we do, we have specific clients that they're a service-based provider, but a lot of times it's the customer's customer that is driving the demand, right? So if you're marketing specifically to the company, like I'm throwing out a lot of companies and clients, and am I losing everybody yet? So
you're like Oprah, like you got a company, you got a client.
So the bottom line is that you never really know who your buyer is, right? You may think you know exactly who your buyer is, but it's actually somebody else that's driving that demand that needs to be filled.
That is exactly right. That's what I was about to touch on is, you said a lot of times companies are talking to like who they think their buyer is. That's exactly where the misalignment comes in, right? When a company starts, they want to figure out who their ideal customer persona is, their ideal target market. And that's all well and good, but that's not necessarily the same as your personas, because that might be like your goal of who you want to reach, but who is your audience actually? Who's actually listening to you? Who's engaging with you? Because it might not be those people. As you said, it might be people that are ancillary to them, adjacent to them, and depending on your business and how high up the budgets are in that, a lot of those people are not going to go out looking for these people. They're going to ask other people in their industry, who did you use for this? So exactly to your point, you will have different stakeholders that you need to reach internally and externally, and understanding truly who that is and who's listening to you. That's where the alignment needs to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree.
That's awesome. If there's like one takeaway from this conversation, is like know who the heck you're talking to.
Definitely.
And that it's not always who you think it is or want it to be, but that does not mean that those audiences should be ignored, because if that's the case, you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah. I also want to touch on like agency as well, because I think a lot of times customers will look at an agency for help and then realize that they don't. And I'm kind of on a different mindset in regards to, now you have an individual who doesn't know anything about the space and is trying to learn about it. So it's like you're digesting that information as like a consumer that wants to learn versus somebody that like, yep, I know how it is. This is how it works. It's almost one of those things where you want to kind of take a look at the whole piece of it and say, okay, these guys actually do a good enough job marketing that they can understand who the people it is that we're talking to. So that's kind of like I
think that's a really good point. A lot of times it actually does better if you have somebody who is not familiar with that industry to come in and have this more objective perspective. As you said, like this is more what the customer is probably going to see potentially. There's that point. There's also the fact that, even if you haven't worked in that specific industry, there are a lot of things that can translate from industry to industry. For example, if you've worked in the cannabis industry and marketing there, there's a lot of rules and regulations that vary from state to state.
Mm-hmm.
That can also translate to working in the financial industry or federal contracts, because you have to be careful about what you say, when you say it, how you say it, more than in other less regulated and compliance focused industries. So I think that's a very good point that you're making.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's 2 good points in this podcast. I need a little.
That's all you have for the today.
I'm gonna go for a third.
Okay. So we went to this kind of like company-wide kickoff for one of our clients, and I understood what obviously the company did. We've been working with them for several years, and one of the sessions I sat in on was just a mock like role play between a customer and the salesperson. And I have to tell you, I learned more about that company in those role plays than any of their marketing materials, because they were being the customer and they were saying like all of the things that they have issues with, all of the complaints that they're getting from their employees or their customers. And then to listen to the salesperson address those concerns, I was like light bulb moment of like, oh my God, I get it. Like I 100% get why your marketing isn't working. It's because we're not talking to how the customers are talking. So again, back to the companies up here from a tech standpoint and the customers here, like, I don't know why my phone's not working. All I know is it's not working, right? And so I would,
And I don't really care why it's not working. Just fix it.
Just fix it,
Yep.
right? So I think companies, brands, they need to take a step back and just listen to their customers. If their team's not big enough to do a role play like that, then they need to go talk to their customers and be like, what is the biggest issue that you're having? And how do we help you with that? Or how do we not help you with that? Yeah.
Yeah. Building off of what you're saying there, I completely agree. I think it also goes back to the point of misalignment, exactly what you were just displaying as somebody that clearly has deep marketing knowledge and a lot of experience in marketing. And then you were like, well, I learned more from the salespeople having this conversation. It goes back to what I was saying about you might have one team speaking one language, another team speaking another language. The information is all there. Like you have all the puzzle pieces, you have all the dots. They're just not getting connected to make the picture look the way that you want it to.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Can we change topics?
Yeah.
All right. So you're the ad alchemist. We honestly haven't had somebody on here talk about ads. So I want to kind of jump into this a little bit because this is one area that I think I know a good amount on, but I'm sure I don't even know even a littlest piece of it. So why don't you kind of go through ads, right? When should they be used? When should they not be used? How should they be used? At what point in time in the marketing plan should they be used?
Geek out on ads for us.
Yeah. Educate us.
All right. Well, the first thing I would say is ads only scale what is already true. So if you're misaligned with your message, if you don't have a good solid foundation on knowing who you're talking to and how they need to hear it, you should not spend any ad dollars until you have that figured out. I will also say that that's not necessarily just copy. That's visuals as well. I mentioned before, I come from a background of photography, commercial photography, and, cut my marketing teeth on building asset libraries for brands. And doing that, how do I word this? There are different ways that we can use words to push people's brains down certain paths, but that is also true of visuals. And even deeper than that is true about where you run those ads. So you may have an amazing ad, but if you're not running it on the right platform at the right time, all those sorts of things, it's not going to matter. The same is true of the messaging. If you do not have the right messaging targeted at the right buyer at the right time, that's the easy part, really. I feel like if you're doing the media buying, like that's easy. It's easy. I don't mean to say that to denigrate the profession of media buying. That's not what I mean. What I mean is media buyers know how to buy media, run ads, optimize those campaigns. Creatives typically know how to create good creative in whatever that is, whether it's a photographer, a videographer, graphic design. They know how to do what they do well. Again, it's the misalignment and the disconnect. So all of these things can't work well if the top of your pyramid, the ad is at the top of the pyramid, and your brand foundations, your messaging, what you stand for, all of that is at the bottom. If that's not solid, then the top part's never going to work. So you should not run ads if you are not clear on your messaging. Or I should say, until you're clear on your messaging. And then once you do start running ads, keeping a close eye on them and optimizing as you go. Have your creative team have several different templates that they can quickly switch in and out to test creative if you're thinking that might not be it. Just kind of doing A/B testing all the way through at every level, not just the people that you're targeting, not just the ad creative, not just the messaging. All of it has to be looked at. Am I making sense?
Yeah,
you
no,
are.
100%.
I always get the question of how much money should you even put towards, like, if you're going to pay to play, at what point, what budget investment level are you going to say, yes, it makes sense for you to do ads, or if you don't hit this threshold, don't put your resources towards ads yet?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me think about how to answer that, because like any marketing person, it depends is my first thought. Like, it depends. I think that even if you're not running ads regularly, if you're a smaller brand or you have a tighter budget, you're not running ads consistently, evergreen ads or whatever, you can still run targeted ads, campaigns, term for certain things. Maybe a new launch coming up and you want to get information about how the product is going to be received before it goes out. Then maybe you run a campaign around that to kind of use it as a double, what's the word I'm looking for? Two birds, one stone. You can get some market research from time while also awareness out there. That's what I campaign. Just run it for brand awareness. Make it do more for you. As far as like actual budget and percentage goes, I have had ad traction for large brands where I have used, as low as $5K a month on 2 different channels, and those metrics, that channels, back when I was working agency as a different agency, and I was responsible for TikTok and Pinterest. Challenging run ads, and I had to make the case for why I should be running the ads there. We'll give you that's the count for a. So ways you can do it strategically with a small and it still move the needle. You just be very strategic in your tactics as well as your intention.
Gotcha.
No, that's awesome.
Do you think that so we a lot of times can work with clients that don't have a complete budget for it. Do you think that starting and stopping ads is okay, or do you think it hurts the brand?
I think it's probably okay. Again, it depends on what the goal of the ad campaign is. If you're just running ads willy-nilly, so to speak, and not really paying much attention, you're just running them because you feel like maybe this will move the needle, that has the potential to hurt the brand. But if you're being very intentional and planning it out, and as I said, kind of making it double duty, I don't think it hurts the brand. If anything, perhaps it even leans more into the scarcity effect.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Awesome. All right.
Okay.
How can people find you?
Yeah.
How can they find you? How can they connect with you? How can they work with you?
Yeah. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. My company is there as well as me and my name. You can also find me at adalchemist.agency. That's the URL. And I actually just yesterday started posting on Mediums.
Good.
I write. Yeah, I've been writing on my blog on my website a bit. So yeah, go check that out. My marketing insights lab
Oh,
on
awesome.
my
Love it.
website.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it. Cool.
Cool.
This has been like a wealth of knowledge. I probably have been the quietest on this recording than any
Interesting.
others.
I
Yeah.
thought I was the one.
No, because I'm just listening. I'm
So
just like,
here's the one piece
That's
that
just
I
because I talk too much.
no,
no,
it's
no, no.
but
But
you
it's good
talk with
information.
yeah.
Yeah.
You talk with intention and there's value
Yeah.
there.
So the one takeaway that I got for
Thank
this,
you.
which is so simple, is I need a piece of paper here. And because you said so much stuff and I'm trying to remember it in my head, like I didn't want to be
It's all
unprofessional.
recorded.
That's true. It is all professional.
Yeah, and then you're gonna drop it into chat and
Yeah,
be like,
get your dad to go and transcribe it for you,
yeah,
True.
and then you know what to do with the rest.
yeah.
Yep, 100%. I'm
All
still putting my
right.
piece of paper though.
Actually, one thing I do want to
Yeah.
offer listeners on my website, there are two things you may want. I do have a lead magnet. You got to sign up for my newsletter that I haven't actually sent anything out on, so you're good there. I have an audience discovery Mad Lib on there, which literally just it's not any new knowledge, but it forces your brain into a different way of thinking about your audience, who you're talking to, your product, your service, your industry, in a nostalgic and fun format, which is a psychology trick and a cognitive trick that I'm using to trick you into thinking about what you do differently and already in a storytelling mindset so that you can connect with your audience through that. And I also have at the top of my website where you can get a free brand audit for a resonance check on your messaging. And you can click that and fill out the little form there if you would like to.
Fantastic.
Sounds
I'll be
great.
doing that today.
Yeah, same. All right, awesome. Well, it was great meeting you. You know, I can't thank you enough for joining us, and you know, hopefully we'll be able to talk to you again sooner or later. You're a wealth of knowledge, that's for
Yeah,
sure. So
I can't wait to like work with you on projects.
yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. So
Awesome.
well,
All
thank
right.
you
Thank you
everybody for
so much,
joining in.
Sarah, for joining
Great.
us.